Welcome in and good evening. Now at 6:30, we are keeping our eye on the tropics.
Yeah, it's important that we do so because Hurricane Beryl is gaining strength as it churns across the Caribbean. Beryl roared across the Windward Islands today as a dangerous Category 4 storm. It made its first landfall this morning on Grenada's Caracal Island.
Now we know Beryl is expected to stay a major storm, so all eyes, of course, are on what's next. Let's head to Chief Meteorologist Travis Herzog with the very latest. Travis.
Jonathan, this is an ominous-looking storm on satellite. If this were September 1st, it wouldn't be that surprising, but instead it's July 1st, and we have a storm near Category 5 intensity in the eastern Caribbean, a part of the Atlantic Basin that is normally very hostile to tropical activity at this time of year. So Beryl continues to break records, and it continues to set its sight on the central Caribbean for later this week, a hurricane watch now in effect for Jamaica. But look, it's over 2,000 miles away from us here in the state of Texas. There is still uncertainty as to where it will ultimately go once it enters the Gulf of Mexico, and it's looking very likely that it will enter the Gulf at some point about 5 days from now. So the latest advisory shows winds of 150 miles per hour. Before the end of this hour, we should get an update from the National Hurricane Center as the hurricane hunters are flying through it right now to assess the strength of the storm. Now, what we want to see is it weaken on its way westward, and it may not do much of that according to the official forecast, still near major hurricane strength as it passes by or over Jamaica. Next run-in with land potential will be the Yucatan Peninsula and then into the southwestern Gulf of Mexico at some point this weekend, and then we'll be watching it very carefully to see what it does from there. So Beryl is a small but powerful hurricane near Category 5 intensity. Hurricane watch is out for Jamaica. If you had vacation plans to the western Caribbean later in the week, know that the Yucatan Peninsula gets impacted Thursday and Friday, and the Hurricane Center is stressing right now there's a lot of uncertainty about what it will look like over the Gulf of Mexico, and Texas needs to monitor it for now. And right now we're going to welcome in meteorologist Elise Smith to talk a little bit more about the wild cards ahead of it that will impact its path. I often like to say that the path to the Gulf of Mexico, that road is littered with uncertainty, and there's a few key things that we're watching down the road to determine what it will ultimately do. What's the first wild card you have on the list?
Well, Beryl's going to be put to the test for sure as it approaches Jamaica, right, which is going to be into the middle of the week on Wednesday. You said could still be near major Category 3 hurricane strength. However, it's going to run into wind shear, and that usually is not favorable for our tropical systems. It likes to pull them apart, and besides that, it also could interact with Jamaica over land. Now, I have to say, when it went over Grenada today, the Grenada Islands, it didn't lose strength that much. So we'll have to see with its proximity to the island if that will impact it at all.
Jamaica, of course, is a much larger island, and we could see weakening as early as tomorrow as it begins to encounter the wind shear, and that would be a good thing down the road for us here in Texas.
Absolutely.
Next wild card.
Next wild card is where it goes once it starts to reach the western portion of the Caribbean Sea. Today, I learned from you, topography is going to play a big role here with where it could track over the Yucatan. The farther south it is, it's going to run into more terrain, and which could also break apart the circulation a little more. Farther north, North Yucatan, you think about Cozumel, Cancun, it's a little more flat, which could allow for that system to move right on overhead, maybe not weaken as much. And then the worst case scenario for us would be if it splits the gap between Cuba and the Yucatan.
Right, we don't want to see it go there or over the tip of the Yucatan, because both of those would increase the chances towards Texas. And then our final wild card has to do with the steering currents.
Exactly. We're keeping close eyes on heat domes, right? Typically when we have heat domes, that's good news for us. It likes to keep the tropics away. However, today, what you told me is that some of these tropical systems could split the gap of the two heat domes. So we'll be watching closely not only the heat dome over the south, but then also what's happening over the west coast as well to see where this could potentially steer Beryl as it reaches the Gulf of Mexico and Bay Campeche.
Yeah, so if it's stronger, there's this weakness right here in between the domes. It'll try to shoot the gap to the north. That's not what we want to see, but we'll keep an eye on each of these wild cards as the week goes on to get a better feel for what it will ultimately do. You also hear the rain.
I was about to say, I got a little distracted by that.
Showers rolling in. We'll show that to you on 13 Alert Radar, and also show you the computer model plots that illustrate this kind of dichotomy between the strength of the storm and where it goes coming up in your full forecast.
That's a great breakdown from Travis and Elise. Thanks so much. And with all that, as we said, it's uncertain right now. Beryl far out may not impact us, but it is a good reminder to make sure you're prepared for a disaster this hurricane season. Emergency officials say a basic kit should have at least 1 gallon of water per person per day for several days. You'll also want non-perishable foods, pet food, prescription medicines, and personal hygiene items. Don't forget those flashlights, plenty of extra batteries as well. Flashlight won't do you good without any batteries. The widespread power outages from last month's windstorm, though, prove you really want to have a disaster kit ready all year long, not just hurricane season, and then make sure you replenish any supplies you use. Also, might be handy to keep a kit in your vehicle in case you get stranded.